The evacuation ship Mercy's Dawn drifted helplessly through the darkness, its engines dead, its distress beacon growing weaker with each passing hour. Inside, 300 Kavari refugees huddled together in the cargo bay, their pale blue skin reflecting the emergency lighting that flickered intermittently. Captain Varn stood at the viewport, his forearms crossed behind his back, watching the distant stars that seemed to mock their predicament. The Kavari were not a warlike species. They had devoted themselves to art, philosophy, and peaceful exploration for millennia. When the Ravagers came to their homeworld, they had no defense against the mechanized horror that consumed entire cities in hours. The evacuation had been chaos. Ships launched half full, families separated, entire continents abandoned to their fate. Mercy's Dawn had been one of the lucky ones, escaping the planet's gravity well just as the Ravager mothership arrived. But luck, it seemed, had run out 3 days ago when their hyperdrive core failed catastrophically. Now they drifted in the void between systems, too far from any inhabited world for their conventional engines to reach before life support failed. The nearest Galactic Council outpost was 7 light-years away. Even if their distress signal reached them, no Council ship could arrive in time. Captain, his navigator, Keela, approached with careful steps. Her voice trembled despite her attempts to remain professional. Life support estimates have been recalculated. We have perhaps 36 hours remaining. Varn nodded slowly, his compound eyes never leaving the viewport. And the distress beacon? Still transmitting, but the power cells are nearly depleted. Maybe 12 hours before it fails completely. The captain turned to face his crew, seeing the resignation in their expressions. They had all accepted their fate. The Galactic Council had written off this entire sector when the Ravagers appeared. No patrol ships, no rescue vessels, no hope. The Council protected the core worlds and left the frontier to fend for itself. Continue broadcasting, Varn said quietly. Until the very end, we continue. Hours passed in silent desperation. Parents held their children close, whispering stories of their lost homeworld. The elderly shared their water rations with the young, knowing it would only delay the inevitable. Engineers worked frantically to extend life support, cannibalizing non-essential systems for every extra minute of breathable air. Then, 20 hours into their death watch, something changed. Captain, the sensor operator, young Dex, practically fell from his station in excitement. I'm detecting a gravitational anomaly bearing 27 Mark IV. Varn rushed to the sensor console, hardly daring to hope. A ship. Unknown, sir. The signature is unlike anything in our database. It's big, whatever it is. Very big. Space itself seemed to tear open 1,000 kilometers from their position. The anomaly expanded, reality bending and warping around a point of impossible darkness. Then from that wound in the universe, emerged a vessel that defied comprehension. It was enormous, easily 3 kilometers in length. Its hull, a matte black, that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship's architecture was brutal in its efficiency, all harsh angles and armored plates. Weapon systems bristled from every surface, point defense cannons, missile tubes, and what appeared to be massive railgun turrets. This was not a ship built for exploration or diplomacy. This was a weapon forged for a single purpose, war. By the ancestors, Caleb breathed. What is that thing? Before anyone could respond, their communication system crackled to life. The transmission was in galactic standard, but spoken with an accent none of them recognized. Evacuation vessel Mercy's Dawn. This is the United Earth Navy battlecruiser Thunder of Mars. We received your distress signal. Prepare for immediate assistance. The bridge erupted in confusion. Earth, the small planet at the edge of Council space, the primitive world that had only achieved faster-than-light travel a mere 50 years ago. They had sent this behemoth? Captain Varn activated the communication system with trembling fingers. Thunder of Mars, this is Captain Varn. We are grateful for your response, but we must warn you, we abandoned this sector because of Ravager activity. You are putting yourselves in extreme danger. There was a pause. Then a different voice came through, older, carrying a weight of authority. Captain Varn, this is Admiral Hayes. We appreciate the warning, but we didn't come all this way to turn back now. Our scans show you have 300 souls aboard and failing life support. We're coming alongside to render aid. As for the Ravagers, well, let them come. The human warship moved with surprising grace for something so massive. Maneuvering thrusters fired in precise sequences, bringing it alongside the tiny evacuation vessel. Docking tubes extended, creating sealed connections between the ships. Within minutes, human engineers swarmed aboard Mercy's Dawn, bringing portable life support units, food, water, and medical supplies. The humans were a curious sight to the Kavari. Bipedal with only 2 arms, they seemed almost fragile compared to other spacefaring species. But they moved with purpose and efficiency. Their equipment advanced beyond what the Kavari had expected. The lead engineer, a woman who introduced herself as Lieutenant Commander Walsh, had their life support system stabilized within an hour. "Your hyperdrive core is completely fused," she reported to Captain Varn. "We can't repair it here, but we can take your entire ship in our hangar bay. We'll get you to Earth Station 7 for full repairs." Varn's compound eyes widened. "Your hangar bay can accommodate our entire vessel?" Walsh grinned. "Captain, Thunder of Mars is a Devastator-class battlecruiser. We were built to carry a full squadron of fighter craft and still have room for salvage operations. Your ship will fit with room to spare." As the evacuation ship was carefully guided into the warship's massive hangar bay, proximity alarms began screaming. Dex's voice cracked with terror. "Captain, multiple hyperspace signatures detected. It's the Ravagers. 3 destroyer-class vessels." The Kavari crew fell into panic. 3 Ravager destroyers had been enough to obliterate their planetary defense fleet. They would tear apart both ships without effort. But the humans seemed utterly unconcerned. Admiral Hayes' voice came over the intercom, calm and almost amused. "All hands, this is the Admiral. We have 3 hostile contacts inbound. Battle stations. Let's show these Ravagers why humanity earned its seat on the Council through combat trials." The hangar bay doors sealed just as the Ravager ships emerged from hyperspace. They were nightmarish constructions of black metal and exposed weaponry, each one half the size of the human battlecruiser. They immediately opened fire, plasma beams and missile salvos racing toward Thunder of Mars. The human ship's response was instantaneous. Point defense systems created a wall of fire that detonated missiles hundreds of meters from the hull. Electromagnetic shields flared to life, dissipating plasma beams into harmless light. Then Thunder of Mars returned fire. The railgun turret spoke first. Tungsten rounds accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed punched through Ravager shields like tissue paper. Secondary explosions rippled across the enemy hulls. Missile tubes opened, releasing swarms of guided warheads that pursued their targets with relentless precision. The human weapons were not elegant or sophisticated by Galactic Council standards, but they were devastatingly effective. The lead Ravager ship attempted to flee, charging its hyperdrive. Thunder of Mars's main gun, a spinal-mounted mass accelerator that ran nearly the entire length of the ship, powered up with a bone-deep hum that the Kavari could feel even in the hangar bay. When it fired, the recoil actually pushed the massive battlecruiser backward several meters. The hypervelocity projectile caught the fleeing Ravager ship center mass. The kinetic energy released was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The enemy vessel simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an expanding cloud of superheated gas and debris. The remaining 2 Ravager ships tried to coordinate their attack, focusing their fire on what they perceived as weak points in the human ship's armor. They had fought dozens of species, learned their tactics, exploited their weaknesses. But humans, it seemed, thought differently about warfare. Thunder of Mars accelerated directly toward the enemy ships, closing to point-blank range. The Ravagers, used to long-range battles of maneuver and positioning, were completely unprepared for such aggressive tactics. At close range, every human weapon found its mark. Broadside cannons that had remained silent now spoke with thunderous authority. Nuclear-tipped torpedoes detonated against enemy hulls. The battlecruiser's armor, designed to withstand similar close-range brutality, shrugged off return fire. In less than 10 minutes, both remaining Ravager ships were reduced to expanding clouds of debris. Captain Varn and his crew watched in stunned silence from the hangar bay's observation windows. The humans had not just defeated the Ravagers. They had demolished them with almost casual efficiency. The same ships that had driven the Kavari from their homeworld had been swatted aside like insects. Admiral Hayes' voice returned to the intercom. "All hands stand down from battle stations. Damage control teams report to Sections 7 and 12 for minor hull breaches. Navigation. Set course for Earth Station 7. Let's get these folks home." 3 days later, as Mercy's Dawn underwent repairs in the massive human space station, Captain Varn found himself in Admiral Hayes' office aboard Thunder of Mars. The human officer poured 2 glasses of what he called whiskey. A traditional Earth beverage, I have to ask, Varn said, his 4 hands wrapped around the glass. Why? The Galactic Council abandoned this sector. You had no obligation to respond to our distress signal. You risked your ship and crew for strangers. Admiral Hayes leaned back in his chair, gazing out at the stars through his office viewport. You know, humanity is still young in the galactic community. 50 years since first contact. The Council races look at us as primitive, violent, barely civilized. And maybe they're right. We fought wars among ourselves for millennia before we reached the stars. He took a sip of his whiskey. But those wars taught us something important. In our darkest hours, when everything seems lost, that's when you find out who you really are. And humanity, for all our faults, we don't leave people behind. When we received your distress signal, there wasn't even a debate. Someone needed help, so we came. But the Ravagers could have destroyed you. Hayes smiled. Captain, humanity didn't earn its place on the Council by being peaceful. We earned it by being very, very good at war. The Ravagers thought they were predators. They never imagined they might run into something worse. He stood, walking to the viewport. The Council thinks our ships are crude, our weapons primitive. They're not wrong. We don't have their elegant plasma technology or their sophisticated energy shields. What we have is 2,000 years of human warfare distilled into steel and tungsten. We build our ships to take a beating and keep fighting. We design our weapons to kill, not to be pretty. Varn joined him at the viewport, looking out at the massive space station bustling with activity. Human ships of various sizes moved with purpose, some military, some civilian, all part of a civilization that had exploded onto the galactic scene with unprecedented speed. Your people, Varn said slowly. You really would have fought the entire Ravager fleet for us? Captain, humanity has a saying. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. The Council chose to do nothing, to abandon the frontier. We chose differently. Hayes turned to face the Kavari captain directly. Your homeworld, it's still there, just occupied by Ravagers. The Council won't help you retake it, but Earth might. We're already mobilizing a task force, 12 battle cruisers, 30 destroyers, and 100 support vessels. If your people want their world back, humanity stands ready to help you take it. Captain Varn felt something he hadn't experienced since the evacuation. Hope. These humans, these impossible, primitive, violent, wonderful humans, offered what the advanced civilizations of the Council would not. They offered to fight for strangers, to bleed for those who could not defend themselves. Why? He asked again, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral Hayes refilled both their glasses, raising his in a toast. Because, Captain Varn, when you're drifting in the void with no hope, when you think no help is coming, someone should come roaring from the dark. Today it was you. Tomorrow it might be us. That's what makes us human. Outside the viewport, another human warship dropped out of hyperspace, joining the growing fleet. On its hull, painted in letters large enough to read from kilometers away, was the ship's name, Hope's Vengeance. The Kavari would return home. The Ravagers would learn that humanity protected its friends, and the galaxy would remember the day when desperate cries in the dark were answered by human warships roaring from the void, bringing not just rescue, but retribution.